Hello and welcome back to Healer Within. This is Amy Marone, your host. And today I have a very special guest, Jodi Silverman. She is a holistic psychotherapist, Reiki Master Teacher, and founder of Therachi Healing and Journey with Kindred Souls. Blending neuroscience, energy psychology, and spiritual wisdom, Jodi helps clients heal relational trauma and chronic pain by restoring regulation and resonance in the nervous system. Her signature framework, Soul Woven Therapy, integrates polyvagal informed psychotherapy, Brainspotting, Reiki Assisted Psychotherapy, the Safe and Sound Protocol, and heart math coherent practices to help the nervous system find safety so the soul can remember its wholeness. Jodi also co-teaches psychotherapeutic Reiki with Elizabeth Hyde, training clinicians to weave Reiki into trauma-informed psychotherapy through her podcast, The Spiritually Curious Therapist, and her educational platform, Journey with Kindred Souls. She bridges science and spirit, guiding others toward embodied healing, restored coherence, and soul level transformation. Jodi, welcome.
Thank you. I'm so excited to be here.
Oh, I'm so happy to have you here. Jodi, I have so many questions for you. The repertoire of tools that you use, your educational background, your whole spiritual side, there's so much to learn and so much to know. The place where I would love to start, Jodi, is to ask you to help us understand the beginning of your journey as a psychotherapist and how you got from where you were to where you are now with all of these spiritually infused tools.
That's a great question. So let me see if I can give you a concise answer, because it is a very kind of windy journey, and I imagine it will continue to be windy because that seems to be how I roll, which is partly why there are so many tools and so many pieces to what you just shared. I'm listening to and
Yes,
I'm like, wow, I'm really all over the place. And I'm not, because
I
there's
love
like a
that.
foundation
Yeah.
that pulls me together, but I am, my podcast, The Spiritually Curious Therapist, I'm curious. And so when something piques my interest, I tend to get really into it and I go down those rabbit holes and I pull out what speaks to me and then I go down the next one. And so I collect things along the way.
Mhm.
And the interesting thing is that what I'm really starting to notice is the convergence of all of these things and
Mhm.
how they come together, which is where the soul woven therapy came from.
Mhm.
It's the weaving of all of these different approaches and tools and ways of seeing the world as a way of bringing coherence and regulation to not only individuals, but to humanity as a whole.
Mhm.
So I'll back up from there and
Sure.
just tell you a little bit about my history. I'm a licensed clinical social worker. So I graduated from University of Pennsylvania back in 1995 with a master's in social work, and I immediately went to work in group homes for adolescent girls. And from there, I just, as most social workers do, like I just kept kind of moving positions, growing and learning along the way. I landed in a community mental health center and ended up staying there for about 23 years.
Mm.
But while there, I had several different positions. I was
Mhm.
lucky enough to be supported in not only trying on different roles, but also being able to create roles,
Mm.
and then stepping into them.
Mhm.
So somehow the universe, spirit has kind of provided me with these opportunities to step into my curiosity and grow from them. And even I'll say, even going back further before I ended up in social work school, that was not my intention going into college. I actually wanted to be a lawyer
Mhm.
initially. And majored in psychology, minored in criminal justice, got a job at a law firm, and worked there throughout college, and but quickly realized like being a lawyer is not really what I wanted to do.
Mhm.
And I wasn't sure where to go from there. And social work kind of was broad enough
Mhm.
that it gave me an opportunity to study, human behavior and social justice and things of that nature.
Mhm.
So it just seemed like the best fit at the time.
Mhm.
Um, so fast forward 23 years at this community mental health center, and there was some changeover in leadership. During that time,
Mhm.
being who I am, I dibbled and dabbled in a gazillion different things. I mean,
Mhm.
I was like the queen of like starting or even fantasizing about starting small businesses, but like
Mhm.
never actually doing it.
Yep.
Everything from like multi-level, those multi-level marketing or
Sure.
whatever they are
Yeah.
businesses. And I looked at a couple of franchises, and I would do all the research and write a
Sure.
business plan. But
Uh-huh.
I always ended up just kind of falling back on my full-time job because at the time I had two young kids.
Mhm.
We needed the income. It was stability. I mean, it's scary to walk
Sure.
away,
Yeah.
from something that's stable. And but within in that time frame, I went to Maui on a family vacation. We were staying with friends of ours, and the wife of the couple was a Reiki master. And
Mm.
I didn't even know what Reiki was. It was actually my
Yeah.
husband who was like, "Oh, you should learn about Reiki while we're here." And I'm like, "Reiki?
Mhm.
What is this Reiki?"
Yeah.
And so I asked her about it, and she was very gracious, and she like took a whole day to train me and attune me and give me, yeah, and just like introduce me to the energy, and I was blown away by it.
Mm.
And so I came back home, went on to get trained and attuned in level 2
Mhm.
and my master teacher. And over the years, I've gone on to do, Holy Fire and Karuna and shamanic Reiki and other things.
Mhm.
But Reiki was really what I think opened the idea of um, the integration of energy into healing work in this way. It kind of gave me a framework for doing that. Prior to that, I was very into, past life regression. I learned emotional freedom technique.
Yeah.
I learned, all the, like the secret, all the metaphysical
Mhm.
stuff I've
Yeah.
been into my whole life. Like none of this was new to me. It's always been something I've been interested in. I had tarot cards when I was 18 years old,
Yeah.
trying to understand them and playing
Sure.
with them and reading them.
Uh-huh.
But Reiki just kind of was like, oh, here's this like framework for all
Yeah.
of this, right?
Completely. Yes.
So what happened was I came back from Maui, got further training and attuning. I started doing Reiki out of my home for like friends and family.
Mhm.
And there was a therapist, actually my neighbor's friend was a therapist who I also knew. I was doing Reiki sessions for them, and she was so blown away by it. She was like, "Oh my gosh, can I send some clients to you?"
Mhm.
So I started to work with her. I started to do some workshops with her, and at some point, like I started to get uncomfortable having people I didn't know in my home.
Yeah.
So I asked her, would she mind, can I sublet her office to do
Mhm.
Reiki in her office? And at that point she said, well, would you be interested in coming to work for me? And I'm work for you doing what?
Yeah.
And she said psychotherapy. And I was like, psychotherapy? Like, let me think about this. And it just was one of those things that just felt right.
Mhm.
So my work in the community mental health center was some direct service, but mostly administrative, supervisory, program development, that kind
Mhm.
of stuff. And
Sure.
even though I had a clinical license and I was using it on a higher level,
Mhm.
I had never done private practice work.
Mhm.
So I ended up going to work for her in her practice as a therapist. And my intention was to bring Reiki into that, but it really became difficult, like lugging my table around, and
Yeah.
it wasn't my space. And
Really.
right, it was like a whole
Yeah.
thing. So
Yeah.
eventually, Reiki just kind of fell into the background for a little while. And, people would ask, are you still doing Reiki? I was like, oh, not as much as I would like to, but I'm doing this other thing. And what I know now is that it needed to so that I could grow my skills and confidence
Mm,
as a psychotherapist.
sure.
So fast forward, 8 years later, pandemic, everything changes. Um, therapists go online now, and
Mhm.
it wasn't really working for me to be in her practice anymore. And so I separated from her and went out on my own. So I
Mhm.
was doing that part-time, still at the community mental health agency. Um, ownership or leadership changed, and I saw the writing on the wall that I was likely going to be let go. So
Mhm.
I kind of manifested this whole
Mhm.
thing of being let go with a severance so that I could open my own practice and not
Oh,
have to worry
sure. A little
about
cushion, a softer landing.
yes, a
Mhm.
very soft landing. And it's funny, I went back and I had started a journal back then, and I had said, okay, this is my 3 months. The first 30 days is going to be allowing, the second 30 days is manifesting, and the third 30 days is taking action. And in that first month was when I was actually let go. And I was like, can I curse on here?
Sure.
I was like, holy shit. This
Yeah.
is happening way quicker than I
Yes.
thought it would. Be
Yeah.
careful, be careful what you wish for.
Yeah. Completely.
My manifesting skills were on. So yeah, so I at that point I already gotten an office, and I made sure that the office was big enough that I could leave my table in
Yeah.
there. So
Yes.
that was one of the criteria. And I had already started to like kind of build this idea, at least starting to manifest in my mind, the this idea of a holistic practice, bringing
Mhm.
Reiki and spirituality
Oh,
into the work.
that sounds so. I call it the divine architecture of spirit,
Yeah.
right? Where things just start happening, and it allows us to just sync all of these tools or all of these higher visions together. What an incredible story. Jodi, thank you. Did you want to? I really want to get into on a deeper level more about Reiki. What you experienced way back when, what you've experienced in terms of growth as a Reiki practitioner, and how you integrate that tool into your holistic work.
Absolutely. I love that you asked that question.
Mhm.
So let's see. It has definitely been a learning curve and continues to be a learning curve. And certainly, I believe, Spirit has been guiding me. My team has been guiding me all along the way, although sometimes it's hard to remember that. In those moments when you're
Yeah.
feeling a little frustrated, a little bit lost, a little bit like, what? Just tell me what to do. But so the interesting thing is, what I liked about Reiki was or is that it was at the end of the day, all you're really doing is using your intention and allowing the healing, like providing space for the healing to happen.
Mm, yes.
And what I'm aware of now, and I'll circle back to this, but it's an important link, is that that's that's what all that's what all healing
Mhm.
is about,
Mhm.
right? It's all about holding that space, that co-regulation, that resonance, that dual attunement, paying attention to what's happening within you, what's happening with the person you're with, and what's happening in the field between you, and keeping that vibration as high as possible.
Yes.
And that's really what, at the end of the day, what Reiki is.
Mhm.
And I like I said, I was introduced to it initially level 1 on Maui, also level 2. I had the traditional Usui for those people, for those of your listeners who know Reiki, I had the traditional Usui master level training, and then later did the Holy Fire and did the Karuna. And like there's so many different ways people are using Reiki and attunements now in like in the Western world that it can get a little bit overwhelming. And a lot of people, Reiki in some circles has kind of gotten this like bad rap because anybody can take a Reiki training. Anybody can be attuned to Reiki. We all have access to it. It's life force energy. It's pure consciousness.
Mhm.
Reiki is everything.
Mhm.
We all have access. The attunement is a relational experience that provides us, I think, with the ability to tune into the energy a little bit more. But
Yes.
it's everywhere. We all have it. But anybody could be a Reiki practitioner.
Mhm.
So what we there's potential for like for lack of a better way of saying it, for like the market to be a little bit flooded and for the experiences to be somewhat diluted. So I
Mhm.
just want to name that because I think that that's out there in the
Mhm.
world. What I have learned in terms of bringing Reiki into psychotherapy in particular is that we are not giving people it's not your typical Reiki treatment that you would get
Mhm.
at we call it like community Reiki that you would get at, let's say, like a spa or a salon or something like that. We are using the energy to support the psychotherapy process.
Mm.
So it's a little
Beautiful. Yeah.
yeah, it's a little bit of a different take on it, which has been
Mhm.
a really interesting progression. So what happened was when I broke off and decided I was going to start my own private practice, and I had my Reiki table in the room, and I started to offer this service called Integrative Reiki, which was like a combination of like Reiki and tarot cards and processing and um, I offered it initially at a very low fee, like $30 or something like that. And even offered it like free for other healers and therapists. And I had lots of interest. But once I started like putting it out there at like my full fee, the interest kind of waned a
Mhm.
little bit, which I thought was interesting. So that like never really took off. And in the meantime, it's really hard once you're set up as a psychotherapist to be like, oh, by the way, here's my Reiki table. Would you like Reiki also? Right? Like, how
Sure.
do you like introduce that to
Sure.
people? Right? So that became a little bit convoluted. And I was also started to do a deep dive. One of my deep dives was into ketamine assisted
Yes.
psychotherapy,
Uh-huh.
right? So we
Fascinating.
know, right, all of the psychedelic assisted stuff and that whole world is a very spiritually driven world. And I was like, oh my gosh, this is like amazing. This is my jam. This is what I'm into. And so I took training, I joined some supervision groups and some consultation and learned a lot and really like amazing people doing this work. But I ended up stopping short because when it came to like at that time, when it came to like getting liability insurance and like thinking about what that would actually look like in
Mhm.
terms of somebody coming to my office and taking ketamine and me sitting with them in a journey all by myself, I
Mhm.
started to get a little bit nervous.
Sure.
And
Sure.
even there were some people who were doing it with folks online, like you would be at home taking ketamine and I would be supporting you on this side of the screen.
Mhm.
That made me a little bit nervous. And
Sure.
what I realized as I was kind of processing that was if people are doing ketamine in therapist's office, I
Mhm.
can do Reiki.
Right. 100%. Oh,
Right?
Jodi, I love that that was your aha moment because yeah, we have all these amazing energies at our disposal and they're powerful and
Yeah.
one could certainly argue more powerful than these substances. And I've been lambasted for saying that, but kindred spirits, Jodi.
Yeah.
I love that you pieced that together. So
Well,
share more about that. That's great.
part of what happened is I did my own ketamine journey
Mhm.
and as I was doing it and when I came out of it was kind of reflecting on it, I was like, oh, that felt a lot like a Reiki session.
Mm,
And so that was part of how I started to make that connection. And
yes,
I think you're right. I mean, the medicine, I have total respect and honor
sure,
for the
sure.
medicine, especially plant medicine, which ketamine is not. It's got
Sure.
its own, you know, pros and cons, but
Hmm.
and this Reiki is another option. Like this
Yeah.
is another way to help somebody enter an altered state
Yes.
that has a lot fewer risks.
Sure. Absolutely.
Right. So that was like kind of my like foray into like, okay, I'm coming out of the closet here and I'm
Yeah.
just going to start offering this. So I put it on my website
Hmm.
and a woman from Canada
Hmm.
contacts me and
Hmm.
says, "Oh, I see you offer psychotherapeutic Reiki, so do I. Would
Hmm.
you be willing would you be willing to supervise me?"
Hmm.
And I emailed her back and I said, "Oh my gosh, so great to meet you. I don't think I'm the I don't know that I have the
Uh-huh.
enough experience to supervise you, but I would be happy to do peer supervision."
Sure.
So this is my dear colleague Liz Hides,
Hmm.
who so that was about 2 years ago now, 2.5 years ago now.
Hmm.
And together we started a Facebook group and we train people in psychotherapeutic Reiki. Well, we call it Reiki Assisted Psychotherapy, but we are using the psychotherapeutic Reiki framework, which was developed by Dr. Richard Curtin. So one of the things we had in common, I guess, is like using that terminology way back in like when I got my initial Reiki training.
Hmm.
I, did a Google search, Reiki and psychotherapy,
Hmm.
Reiki and therapy, and I stumbled across this book, Psychotherapeutic Reiki,
Hmm.
written by Dr. Richard Curtin, who's a psychologist who
Hmm.
decided to start using Reiki in his psychotherapy practice. So he has this whole framework. He wrote this book back in 2014. Um, Liz and I both like were using the terminology and we're referencing the book, and we decided to reach out to Richard.
Wow.
So we
That's so
contacted
smart.
Richard. He is the most like beautiful, amazing human. He's
Hmm.
now retired
Hmm.
and he has been supporting us through this whole process. And
Hmm.
he's come to our supervision groups, he comes to our trainings.
Love
He's
it.
been amazing. So we've just been kind of developing this
Hmm.
as we've been going along and some of the things that we have learned is one of the biggest fears is like how do I bring this into my psychotherapy
Hmm.
practice in an ethical and legal way?
Yeah.
So we've had to do a lot of work around that. There are other people out there who have done some trainings around that and done a deeper dive into
Hmm.
like the logistics. We had a lawyer come and talk to us about how to word things. And that's why we call it Reiki assisted psychotherapy and
Hmm.
not it was Reiki assisted psychotherapy, which I took from ketamine assisted psychotherapy. Because
Sure.
what we're doing is psychotherapy, we're using Reiki to assist the
Sure.
process.
Sure.
And through our teaching, so we've now taught 3 cohorts, and then we've also done a clinical level training.
Hmm.
All amazing, amazing groups, and we've learned so much along the way.
Oh.
And what I'll share with folks is, again, so this is kind of coming back full circle, is the way in which we bring Reiki into our practices is more of we call Reiki the co-therapist.
Hmm.
So again, we're not although sometimes people might get on the table, that's not always necessary
Hmm.
because Reiki is always in the room. And
Yes.
so we use the energy to guide us, to support us in
Hmm.
staying regulated and coherent. We use the energy to create a frame of coherence within the therapy room. We will guide people in, guided imagery, bringing the energy in.
Hmm.
And what happens is, and this is just, you can plop it really into any theoretical perspective. But for me, because I work very heavily from a polyvagal theory framework,
Hmm.
is that Reiki shifts people from that sympathetic or collapsed state into the safe, connected ventral vagal state where they are better able to access difficult emotions, memories and thoughts and process them without getting re-traumatized.
Mhm. Mhm.
So we've kind of developed this approach where we're not necessarily giving a Reiki treatment like you might get at,
Sure.
at the spa, but we are intentionally bringing the energy in to support the process
Mhm.
of healing holistically.
Jodi, that's so next level and absolutely beautiful integration of the spiritual with the more conventional approach. And I can tell, I mean, it's pioneer level stuff. You've really taken something and you've made it your own. Which is brilliant. I think the true mark of an entrepreneur is to bring forth something that doesn't readily exist in the marketplace. That's when we know it's soul inspired or heart inspired. Jodi, and thank you so much. I mean, I'm learning so much from what you're sharing. What I'm curious about is, you know, your spiritual side. You had referenced maybe a spirit team. I would love to know more about the relationship that you've built with the etheric realm and how that guides and helps you in your work.
This is a tricky question, and I have a feeling that my team actually sent you to ask me this question.
Mm. There you go. There you
Yeah.
go. I believe it. I believe
Yeah, because I circle around this a lot.
it.
As I mentioned, and I've been thinking about it a lot. I've always been kind of spiritually, metaphysically inclined. Like it was never not a thing for me.
Mhm.
Growing up, we would talk about spirits all the time. We were always calling on our parking spirit guide to help us
I love
find
it. I love it. Yes.
parking spots.
Right.
I had a Ouija board incident, when I was 16 where we actually had to throw out the Ouija board.
Ooh.
And so it was, and I've had people throughout my life, family members who it was just a
Mhm.
part of who we were kind of
Uh-huh.
growing up. There was never a question
Mhm.
necessarily, but also never really like a full all in. So I've always been kind of walking this tightrope of like, oh yeah, that's just always been there and always been a part of my belief system to like, but is it really?
Yeah.
And so throughout my life, I've had these like experiences, but I've tended to like either minimize them or forget about them. I talk about like I have these periods in my life where I'm either like awake or asleep. And so
Mhm.
like, there was a long period of time, especially after having my kids, I've got two kids that I'm raising and I'm working and, married, like there's it's like the being human things that you have to do.
Yeah.
And you're just trying to get through day to day to day. And like, I forget all about like this whole spiritual part of my life.
Mhm.
And then I'd feel really like off or dysregulated and realize, oh, I haven't been doing my practices. I
Mhm.
haven't been, connected. And then
Mhm.
I'll come back around and I'll get back
Sure.
into it, right? And I
Sure.
think a lot of people kind of do this because
Yeah.
we've got one foot in
Yeah.
doing the things we have to do and as humans and like this other foot in this
Mhm.
other place. And I have to wonder, is some of that like spiritual, did I have my periods of spiritual bypassing? I'm sure I did.
Yeah.
Um, but I've always loved to play in that realm. And so
Mhm.
like Reiki would do that for me. Oh, I also like I got trained in integrated energy
Mhm.
techniques, EFT, tarot cards. Like I've always been drawn to the energy of those things.
Mhm.
Um,
Mhm.
but I've always just been on that line, if
Sure.
that
Sure.
makes sense. Yeah.
Right. Toggling between the earth realm and the spirit realm.
Yeah. I mean,
Uh-huh.
and and that's why I said I think my team asked sent you know sent
Yeah.
that question to you because I think that's the way what I'm coming to realize and trying really hard to accept, radically accept, is the way my team communicates with me is through other people. And
Oh, uh-huh.
right, so like I am not I'm not somebody, even in doing Reiki,
Mhm.
like throughout my trainings and people I've met along the way, there are people who hear the energy, see the
Yes.
energy, like get all sorts of visions and intuitions, and I don't. I
Mhm.
can feel it. I can
Mhm.
feel the energy on my hand, like I can feel it and I can move it and I can,
Mhm.
shift it. But I'm not necessarily dialed in that way, which can be frustrating,
Mhm.
especially when you've got someone next to you being like, "Oh, and I see your chakra
Right.
is opening," and I'm like, "Where?"
Right.
Like,
Show off.
yeah, and there's this purple surrounding you. I'm like,
Uh-huh.
"Where?" Like I don't see
Yeah.
it. I
Yeah.
don't.
So you feel it though.
I I do like I feel
Uh-huh.
it on my hands, but there have been some moments of frustration um and there was a time too where I felt like I was a little bit more open, and I think this is for any of us. Like,
Mhm.
it ebbs and flows depending on what state your nervous system
Sure.
is in, I think, and
Sure.
what vibration you're actually
Mhm.
embodying. But I
Yes.
also, go
Uh-huh.
ahead.
Oh no, finish your thought. I just had a follow-up question, but I don't want to interrupt your flow.
Well, I think I part of part of this process has been how I got to where I am today in terms of this work, and that is the reconciliation between the nervous system and the soul.
Mm,
And that's where I'm really right now, like bringing all of these things together is where I'm really finding the my sweet spot. And I think that's partly why I've always been, like I've been solidly in like earth school with
mhm,
like this understanding and desire and openness for
mhm.
spirit, but not being fully pulled in because I
Sure.
need to be here in order to do the work that
Mhm,
I'm here to do. And so when I think about that and I reflect on it, what comes to mind for me is we have these human bodies with these nervous systems, and our nervous system's number one priority and goal is to keep us alive.
mhm,
No matter what. It
mhm,
will do whatever it needs to do in order to keep us alive, even if it's not the best thing for us. And then we have these souls,
mhm,
and our soul's number one prerogative is um, uh, to grow and to evolve and to connect with other souls and to move towards coherence.
mhm.
Those two things are often in conflict with each
Yes.
other, right?
Yes.
And I think that's the game, right?
Mhm,
Like that's what we're here on earth to do. We're here on earth to take those two things and to weave them together. And once we're able to do that, and we can't stay in that state all the time, but once we're able to weave them together, then we can start moving in this direction towards coherence. And as each individual one of us does that, humanity as a whole starts to do that. Consciousness starts to do that because each one of us is just a part of consciousness.
sure. Jodi, so beautifully articulated. What can you share about your own spiritual practices that might help, keep your own energy, in a high frequency place? And what would be the kind of signals you would get from the outer world that tell you, hey, pump the brakes, sister, right? It's time to do some spiritual work. Anything
Yeah,
you can share about your
100%.
personal practices.
Yeah, 100%. It certainly has ebbed and flowed.
Mhm,
And it's twofold, right? Because we want to work both on our physical body and our
mhm,
nervous system and also on our soul level, right? And
mhm,
the two again aren't they have two different prerogatives, but they're not necessarily different. And
Hmm.
I think that that's really important to remember as well. So a couple of things that, and this is why I have all these different tools. So I have found, first of all, Reiki, of course. So I do a lot of self Reiki. I recite the precepts every day. I should do them every night too, but I find the precepts to be incredibly grounding. And for those who don't know, Reiki has 5 precepts that kind of ground the practice. And the first one is so everything starts with just for today. So just for today, I will not anger.
Hmm.
Just for today, I will not worry. Just for today, I'll be grateful for all my blessings. Just for today, I will do my work diligently and with integrity. Just for today, I will be kind to myself and all things. And those are just so incredibly grounding. And before any of your listeners who are therapists say, but we have to feel our worry and our anger,
Yeah.
it's more complicated than that. When we say, I will not worry, I will not anger, we're not saying we're not feeling those emotions. We're saying
Yeah.
that we're not clinging to them.
Ah, that's a
So,
beautiful distinction. Yeah.
yes. So sometimes I change the wording a little bit and I'll say like, I will release anger. I will release worry. So that's some therapists push back. I push back against it at first until I really understood what they mean. So yeah, I ground in those precepts. I heart math
Hmm.
is a wonderful tool for those of your listeners who aren't familiar with it. You can just Google heart math. It's an organization that's been around for 30 years and they have been dedicated to researching the electromagnetic field of the heart. And what we know is that the heart is not just something that pumps blood. It's actually got it's very complicated and it's got the strongest electromagnetic frequency of any other organ in our body. It goes out about 4 feet, and all of our emotional frequencies live within that
Hmm.
space. And so when we can bring our heart into when we can go into coherence, which means our heart, our mind, and our body are all working together, our vibration lifts. And when our vibration lifts, then other people come into resonance with that.
Hmm.
So I have found heart math to be incredibly helpful, and they intentionally have made the techniques very, very simple
Hmm.
so that anybody can access them.
Hmm.
And it really is about breathing in and out of your heart center and um, intentionally activating what they call like an uplifting emotion.
Hmm.
So compassion, gratitude, awe. If you can embody the vibration of that emotion and breathe, you will bring yourself into coherence, higher vibration. And it's measured through heart rate variability.
Hmm.
So that's another tool that you can use to measure to use your body to know whether you are in coherence or not. And it has to do with how high your heart rate variability is.
Hmm.
So I use that tool as part of my meditation. And then, of course, faith, which again, I struggle with sometimes.
Sure.
There's a part of me that,
Uh-huh.
certainly questions some things, but just, trusting that my team has my back. Um, and that, everything that happens that I have no control over, that's another really good practice is like
Sure.
knowing what you have control over and what you don't.
Mm.
Um, and um, it's something that is being done from my learning. And if I can approach it from that perspective, it softens things
Mm.
around that.
Love it. Love it.
Yeah.
Very, very eclectic drawing from many um, different modalities and tools. When Jodi, when you reflect back on your career journey, um, what do you think you wish you knew at the beginning of your journey that you now know?
That's such a hard question to answer because I don't know that in hindsight, and it goes back to that idea of like how I had to work in that therapy practice in
Mhm.
order to do what I'm doing now. I also had to did the work that I did in the community mental, like everything, everything that happened
Mhm.
had to happen in order for me to be where I am now,
Yes.
right? And
Yes.
that's really hard to remember in the moment, even as I'm
Yeah.
in this place now and thinking
Uh-huh.
about where might I be 20 years from now.
Right.
Having the patience, like, and the
Uh-huh.
faith that, like, the universe is just keeps putting one step, each step in front of me, and I just have to
Mhm.
step into it and trust that each one builds on the next. And
Uh-huh.
if I could go back and tell the Jodi 20 years ago that was the case,
Mhm.
I don't know that it would have changed anything.
Mhm.
And I probably would have just been like, F you. I
Right,
want what I
right.
want and I want it now.
Yeah.
Um,
Yes.
because it's hard. We our lifetimes are really just like such a quick
Yeah.
moment, but when you're in it, it doesn't feel that way,
Yeah.
and especially when you're wanting something that you don't have
Mhm.
or yearning for something that isn't available.
Yeah. Yeah. Now I'm going to ask you a really hard question because I'm a curious soul also. Is there any training that you received that you put into practice and then thought to yourself, this is bunk. I'm going to throw it out the window.
Oh,
This doesn't apply. This doesn't work. This doesn't have real life application.
I was about to say, oh, yes, totally. But then I stopped myself and I realized that, I have taken bits and pieces
Mhm.
from everything that I have
Uh-huh.
learned
Yeah.
and have applied it. So as a whole, yes.
Hmm.
But as far as like what I could take from it
Yeah.
and apply it now,
Yeah.
no. So like
Yeah.
I got trained in cognitive processing therapy, which is a very, cognitive process. I don't use that. I also got trained in community-based cognitive behavioral therapy. I don't necessarily use that. But what I learned through the process of that training, parts of them definitely apply to the work that I'm doing now because I've had that experience. I can take the parts that work
Yeah.
and they
Completely.
inform,
Yeah.
yeah, they
Yeah.
inform everything. So, yeah, there's certainly different interventions within the psychotherapy world. Um, and even the trainings that I had gone to because again, some of my positions in the community mental health agency were administrative. So I did like oh gosh, what is it? Spreadsheets. I went to like a 2-day training on how to
Yeah.
do spreadsheets.
Yeah.
Well, I have my own business.
Hmm.
And so I like actually need to know that.
Yeah.
Right?
Yeah. Spreadsheets, all of this, administrative
Yeah,
stuff that we actually borrow from our training and that might seem random or a little mind numbing at the
absolutely.
time, but it folds in so beautifully
Absolutely.
into business ownership. Jodi, so interesting. The other question I want to ask you, because I've actually had therapists and nurses and people in more mainstream settings say, Amy, how did you do this? How do you get from mainstream? Because my background is rehabilitation counseling, but
Right.
how do you then, pivot or transition from a position that is, recognized and clearly understood, and in some cases compensated well. And how do you transition into more of a spiritually infused business model?
So your question made me think of this woman who has since passed, but she was um, oh, what did she do? So when I worked in the community mental health agency, we hired her to do, I guess, like outreach and like agency development and planning. There's a word for it. I'm not thinking about it right now. But
Okay.
she was kind of like this big picture person. who help the agency do like surveys and figure out what our goals were. Um, and I remember sitting with her one time and she made a comment about spirits being in the corner of the room.
Mhm.
And I thought to myself, A, that's really interesting that she would say that.
Mhm.
And B, like, I wonder why she said that to me.
Yeah.
So it
Yeah.
was just, so I asked her, I was like, are you clairvoyant?
Uh-huh.
And she said, yeah. And I said, oh, we need to have lunch. So
Uh-huh.
this was like years ago. So again, this
Uh-huh.
is one of those like, I'm always like I get real curious and real interested. So we went out to lunch. And so she was one of these people who had a couple of different things that she did. She worked with organization. She was an ordained minister. She
Yeah.
did a couple of the program planning, wedding planning, I don't know, a whole bunch of
Mhm.
things. And I said, how do you integrate like your spirituality with that? Because she also was like a medium and she was
Yeah.
clairvoyant. And she said to me, I'll never forget this. She said, my personal mission statement. That's what she was. She was somebody who helped the organizations with missions and value statements. So she said, my personal mission statement is to bring people closer to God. And no matter what I do,
Mhm.
that's like no matter what capacity I'm doing
Yeah.
that in,
Yes.
that's what I'm doing.
Oh,
Right.
uh-huh.
And I
Yeah.
never forgot that because I was like, wow, that just totally blew me away.
Yeah.
And so I went on this like journey of trying to find my personal mission statement,
Mhm.
which has changed over the years, but it basically comes down to like providing space for people to grow
Mhm.
and heal
Mhm.
and learn. And so no matter what I do,
Mhm.
that's what I always come back to.
Yeah.
So whether I
Yeah.
was working in community mental health or I was my own practice or even with friends and volunteer work, whatever it was.
Mhm.
So to answer I know this is kind of a long way of
No,
answering your
it's
question,
beautiful.
but to
Yeah.
answer your question, start there. Like no matter what you're
Mhm.
whatever, no matter what your like work
Mhm.
is, what is your personal mission statement and how can you start to integrate that into what you're already doing?
Mhm.
And once you start doing that, the pathways start to open.
Yeah. Completely.
Yeah.
That was a lovely, lovely, illustration of somebody from your past who kind of pieced that all together for you and put it in a framework that most of us can wrap our heads around. And Jodi, I will say, the I think the high frequency thing is a soul level thing.
Yeah.
And I think the tools that we choose is more of a personality thing, the
There
human
you go.
component of
Yep.
ourselves that's
Hmm.
allowing the energies to flow through. For some people, it's through the written word. For other people, it's, administering therapy, or leading a team, or D, like so many helper healers, it's D, all of the above. it's
Yeah.
it's everything that we gently over time layer into our business model. And you alluded to something, we're always, becoming. Who knows? I mean, do you buy into the theory that, 3 or 5 years from now, Jodi, your business will be even more eclectic?
Oh, it has to be because I can't stop
Yeah.
myself
Right.
from
Uh-huh.
yeah, I mean there's always going to be something else, something more. I mean like and again like I'm always adding and I think where I've gotten to is back to that idea of like you know, so my new updated mission statement, right? Like, which is
Yeah.
really the same thing but different language, is like, helping people to weave together their nervous system and their soul purpose
Mm-hmm.
in a way that feels resonant to them.
Mm-hmm.
And in doing that, I'm not only helping them, but I'm helping humanity move toward and consciousness move towards coherence. And whatever fits into
Mhm.
that, I'm game.
Oh,
Like,
I love it.
right?
I
Like,
love it. Jodi, you have a couple different kinds of audiences or client base and entry points. Can you share with viewers and listeners? Number one, let's just say I'm a potential client who could benefit from your multi-modality approach. How do those people find you?
so probably the best way to find me as an entry point is through my psychotherapy website, which is Therachi, THERACHI healing.com. So pretty much everything I do is on that website.
Okay,
I also, so I had to separate out my businesses because of my clinical license.
sure.
So under Therachi is everything that I do that's psychotherapy related. So,
Hmm.
Reiki Assisted Psychotherapy, I do brain spotting. I use all the tools
Hmm.
that I use in my coaching business to support psychotherapy. In
Hmm.
my coaching business, which is Journey with Kindred Souls, I'm doing coaching, I'm doing courses, everything else goes there.
Uh-huh.
And that's partly just because I have to separate out my
Sure.
business. I'm actually in the process of rebranding to kind of have an umbrella, and because I think it's confusing me, so it's got to be confusing other people.
I get it. Oh Lord, do I get it.
Yeah.
So this other coaching business,
Mhm.
tell us what kind of backgrounds people have that might, desire coaching or training from you and your
Yeah.
colleague. Tell me about that.
So there's two pieces to it. So one is if you are if you're a psychotherapist
Mhm.
who is interested in bringing Reiki into your practice, that there's an entry point there. And I do have, if you're on Facebook, I do have a Facebook group called Psychotherapeutic Reiki for Clinicians. I
Okay.
should have made that shorter in hindsight, but that's what it
That's
is.
okay. I've done it too.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Um, and we have about, I think, close to 800 people in that group now, and
Mm,
that's kind of where we kind of post all of our trainings and
sure.
access to our supervisions and things like that. So most of my, actually all of my trainings right now are specifically for clinicians who are wanting to integrate Reiki into their practice using this psychotherapeutic Reiki model.
Mhm.
Um, if you are, so the other thing that I do, and I'll just mention real briefly, but it is a big part of my practice, is I
Mhm.
use the Safe and Sound protocol and the Rest and Restore protocol, which are therapeutic listening protocols developed by Stephen Porges, who was the person who developed polyvagal theory. It's too much to get into now, but both of these protocols work to bring safety into your nervous system because no healing can happen if your nervous system does not feel safe.
Mhm.
And I think that's a lot of the problems that we run into with people who spiritually bypass. And I've seen this in working
Mhm.
with people who are wanting to heal and they are very spiritual and they have a meditation practice and they have guides and they have access to their guides and they might even be clairvoyant and they're spending all their time kind of in the ethers, but they're
Mhm.
not in their bodies because and
Yes.
their
Yeah.
bodies are terrified and they
Mhm.
don't realize it. And
Mhm.
so for those folks, the work is to like come back into your body because again, we need to weave those two things together. We are on this earth for a reason.
Yeah.
And if we are not in our bodies and we are not doing our earthly things, we're gonna have to come back again.
Sure.
And I, for
Sure.
one, actually don't want to come back again. So
Yes, I know. I think your guides told you to tell that to me.
there you go.
I'm
Your
listening.
guides told me.
Touche, touche. You got me back. That is so wonderful and next level, Jodi, because I know some of my clients have struggled with that. People who work in the healing arts,
Yeah,
they've got all of this trauma that hasn't been fully processed, and so um, they're running around doing all the things, but their physical body isn't cooperating.
right.
So they can find you through that website.
Yep, through Journey. So my other website is journeywithkindredsouls.com.
Mhm.
And you can find me through that website as well. So that's another place. And I to find me. And I do work with people who have who are experiencing chronic pain and chronic illness,
Mhm.
as work with nervous system regulation and also relational trauma and
Mhm.
complex
Mhm.
trauma. So those are my kind of my niches as far as the work that I do.
Mm. Jodi, I absolutely have thoroughly enjoyed our conversation. And I'm so grateful for how curious you are. And also too, it just kind of, further validates for a lot of people who are, want to create spiritually infused businesses, that there's no beginning and no end.
Right.
There's no perfect way to say, I mean, most of us are pioneers in whatever inspires us, and that it can take many years for us to take everything that we've learned and pull it together as brilliantly as you have and continue to do with all these different modalities. So well done. 5 gold stars for the level of complexity of what you've done. Again, I think that's a mark of brilliant entrepreneurship. And I have no doubt there are a lot of people listening, Jodi, who are going to benefit immensely from what you've shared with your personal journey and the excellence that is, you know, exists now in its present format and then to be continued. Jodi, one last thing before we go. Is there anything coming up the pike in your work that you might want people to know about?
Oh, thank you so much for asking that. Yes, two things.
Okay.
One is that we haven't put the dates or anything out yet, but we are going to be doing a another cohort of psychotherapeutic Reiki foundations in the winter.
Mhm.
So probably in February. So anyone who is interested in that, please reach out, and I'll put you on the list so that you can get that information. And then the other thing is, I am starting a group in January called From Lock to Liberation.
Mhm.
It's a very small group, 4 to 6 people, and this is specifically for people who are struggling with trauma bonds. And
Okay.
we will use the Safe and Sound protocol and Rest and Restore protocol to help loosen the nervous system locks that occur when we are trauma bonded to somebody else.
Mhm.
And we have like a whole protocol. It's a 12-week program that we're gonna go through. So for anyone who is struggling with being in a relationship that they know isn't good for them, but they can't seem to leave,
Mhm.
this would be a really good program for
Mhm.
them. So I have openings in that group if anyone is interested.
Jodi, absolutely amazing. So wonderful. You've touched on so many really critical points I for my clients, for anybody who's listening. I'm going to put all of Jodi's links in the show notes and eventually all over social media. Jodi Silverman, thank you so much for
You're
taking
welcome.
time to share your message with listeners and viewers. I really deeply appreciate you as a soul, and as a fellow business owner. Thank you so much.
Thank you for having me. Thank you so much.
Take care now.